Games about gravity manipulation are nothing new by this point. From countless Flash games to, let's say, quasi-AAA titles like Gravity Rush, this concept has been explored before. That being said, I still enjoy the mind-bending puzzles that can come out of these types of games. I've always been a fan of puzzles that tax my spatial awareness, so I was quite pleased to see such a game on this month's Humble Choice subscription. Etherborn's version of shifting gravity is determined by the direction of the surface you're currently standing on. To shift gravity, you simply have to walk from what's currently your floor onto a wall. You can't just walk up to any wall and shift gravity that way though, the two surfaces have to be connected by an appropriate ramp. In practical terms, this means that gravity can only ever be shifted at 90-degree angles. With these limitations, the game manages to deliver quite some brain teasers through its creative level design. This is especially the case because the game doesn't give the player full control over the camera. It's extremely difficult to get a sense of the entire level's layout since you simply can't rotate it as much as you'd like. And depending on what angle the game chooses to show the level to the player, it's possible to completely lose track of where you actually are in relation to everything else. I'm certain that this must have been a conscious decision in order to make the game a bit more difficult, but I also felt frustrated at certain parts because I just couldn't get a good enough look at the levels in order to figure out the route where I had to go. On the gameplay front, there isn't much more to say about Etherborn. Its main mechanic is implemented beautifully. There is some more to the game than mere navigation, but not much. The puzzles mostly consist of either finding a number of glowing polyhedral shapes or navigating constantly shifting surfaces. The polyhedral shapes are used to activate switches that alter the level in some way once they're activated. And the shifting surfaces are achieved through a bunch of columns that jut out of the walls and floor when you come near to them. White columns only activate if they're on what currently constitutes the player's floor, and black ones activate at any time the player is in range, regardless of orientation. And that's just about it for the interactive part. For the non-interactive part, i.e. the narrative, well, there isn't much to say here because as far as I can tell there is no actual narrative. The game has monologues that act as interludes between levels, but either I'm way too dense to get what any of it is supposed to mean or it truly is meaningless. The game's visual aesthetic is certainly one of the highlights of the game. Given that you only have limited control over the camera, the developers managed to set up quite some stunning sights over the course of the campaign. Though I have to say that the game is at times worryingly taxing on my machine, which, even though it's a few years old now, still offers respectable performance on a lot of modern games. It's especially dubious because the game boasts a polygonal art style that eschews Phong shading altogether, so I'm not sure what's responsible for the heavy frame rate drops. The music is mostly serviceable, if a bit too repetitive for my taste, so I wouldn't recommend spending the $10 it costs to buy the soundtrack on Steam. Speaking of prices, let's discuss the price of the game itself a bit more while we're at it. Etherborn is currently priced at $17, which, as far as I can ascertain, has also been its launch price. That's quite steep for a game that boasts 2 hours for a run through the 4 proper levels it has, and I'm not counting the tutorial, the ending or the main hub, which acts as a glorified stage select screen as discrete levels. There is a New Game Plus mode to add some scanned replay value, though the only thing it changes is the locations of the polyhedral shapes, so all the platforming challenges remain the same on your second run. My total playtime for the game and the New Game Plus mode clocked in at around 3 hours and 12 minutes according to Steam. And that's with sitting through the credits for a second time, because the game doesn't let you skip those for some reason. But looking at those credits as well as the splash screens when you boot up the game reveals a few interesting things. The game was crowdfunded through Fig and received additional funding through Fox Next, a Humble Bundle, and ostensibly Spanish taxpayer money, since it mentions 2 publicly funded institutions at the end. To then turn around and ask for $17 for this game is quite bold. I'm glad I got it through my Humble Choice subscription, because since I'm on the Classic plan and pay $11 for 10 games each month, I only paid $1.10 for Etherborn. I certainly enjoyed my time with the game itself, but I can't in good conscience recommend it to others if they were to purchase it at full price. Heck, I'd even argue that the lowest sale price at which the game was offered was still a bit too high to unambiguously recommend buying it. The game is already verging on being too short as it is. A few more levels definitely wouldn't have hurt and would have justified the price a little better. It's a shame, really. The gameplay is solid and the aesthetic is pleasing, so I would have loved to spend some more time with it. And I hate bringing in finances when judging a work of art, but if the discrepancy between what is an acceptable price and what's being demanded is this large, it has to become a factor when issuing a recommendation. So my verdict is, if the game ever drops below, say, $5 and you're a fan of games that test your spatial awareness, give it a look. Otherwise, don't bother.